Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're going to be talking about the full-length debut album from Lil Yachty called Teenage Emotions. You know, I think there's a misconception surrounding why certain critics, particularly those who like old school, more lyrical hip-hop like myself, are a little bit, let's say, reticent towards Lil Yachty and the whole mumble rap crowd. Often surrounding comments like, oh, you just don't get it. It's music for the kids. It's more about the vibe and the bangers and the flow than the actual words that are being said. After all, it's so upbeat. It's so happy. And yet here's why that doesn't really fly with me surrounding Lil Yachty. Maybe it's because I've become more accustomed to this sort of flow and style of mumble rap, or that I've been listening to rappers who flow with more speed and intensity for years now, but he's always been very understandable for me. The words do come up. You kind of hear what he's trying to have to say. And while I've never really liked his flow, or his delivery, or the fact that he's a sloppy MC who clearly has the potential to be better and just doesn't care, that's never been at the core of my issue with him. No, it's something that's far more common and jarring than many people have given credit. For as much as Lil Yachty wants to project a dualistic nature between his rapping and his sensitive crooning side, the issue has always been tonal dissonance between his delivery, that very flat monotone he tries for with all the auto-tune that kind of warbles up and down, and a lot of his content. On his guest verse on Broccoli with Drum, he referenced Columbine. Let's put aside the fact that instrumentally hip-hop is slowly becoming less dreary and bleak, and that sonically Lil Yachty, he's not exactly breaking down barriers, but when you combine it with how he's still rapping about much of the same bargain barrel subject matter I've been hearing for decades and not doing it all that differently, I'm sorry, I'm not impressed. Cause yeah, I went back to listen through Lil Boat. Aside from being too long, the best thing I could really say about it were some cute melodic samples and some decent hooks. In terms of content, it wasn't interesting, wasn't subversive, certainly wasn't well constructed, and yet even with all that, I had a bad feeling going into his upcoming record Teenage Emotions, where with this lead-off single, Peekaboo with Migos, it looked to be trending towards tones and sounds that pivoted towards the mainstream and sounded a lot more expensive, and removed the few homegrown, playful things that made Lil Yachty sound at least somewhat different. But hey, surely there would be something on this 21-track, 70-minute album, right? Well, actually, you know, I think there might be. Yeah, I was all set to go in and really despise this album, give it a pretty vicious thrashing, but there is a few songs that yank this away from truly wallowing in the gutter, and maybe even reflect a little bit of promise for Lil Yachty down the road, maybe just a little bit. Now, I will not say this is a good album, or even that it's a passable record. The fact that I can make a comprehensive list of all the terrible lines and bars on this album says mountains about the lack of quality control, but I wasn't expecting a real atrocity, and I gotta be honest, I didn't get it, which makes me less disappointed and more exasperated as a whole. I really wanted to tear into this thing, and I'm going to some extent, but not quite as much. And let's make no mistake here, if you're expecting all my problems with Lil Yachty to have just gone away, you're gonna be wrong. Because as a rapper, when he tries, he's barely passable. But I only need to point to Digital Nas Freestyle as a case study of what happens when he doesn't try. I mean, he's not even on the beat, his rhymes don't connect, he can't stay on topic, and among your choice bars include references to your bitch cleaning up the piss on his floor, him having trouble sustaining an erection, and turning your mom into a pedophile who wants to screw him. Which doesn't even make sense because I'm fairly certain every age of consent in the United States is above 18. And you might say, sure, it's a freestyle, but when you have a record that's overlong and filled with repetitive content and production, there's no excuse to use a song this inept and badly constructed. Why is this here? And sure, some of you might make the argument that it's willful immaturity and that he knows he's behaving like a complete tool on songs like Priorities, where he actively brags about cheating on his girlfriend and references the movie Takers of all things, a movie I'm fairly certain everybody forgot until this moment. But there is a difference between being childish and just being a dick without any redeeming qualities. Even by the standards of riff-raff-esque so bad it's hilarious, on that same song, he's talking about a girl getting wet off his poster, for which he lays down a coaster of all things, which cannot be comfortable for her, where she sucks him like an insect, most bugs don't give you blowjobs, and that she's his stepsister, so it's incest. Which, last time I checked, that's not funny. And that's not the only incest reference, because on All Around Me opposite YG completely phoning his verse in, he references screwing his god sister among screwing lesbians, which I don't even think is a thing. But that's the frustrating thing. For as much as Lil Yachty might embrace tones in his production that might imply a bit of a brighter mood, it's not like he makes up for his lack of lyrical construction with wit or flavor or humor, and there's still a lot of tonal dissonance here. I've already talked about how utterly incompetent giant peekaboo is on Billboard Breakdown with the whole blow me like a cello line, which on Rap Genius he tries to justify and fails. But I think the line that skeeves me out even more is play with the kitty like hello. It reflects a real juvenile mindset towards sex that gets really creepy against production punctuated by distant screams. Of course, then you have Takeoff of Migos ending the song comparing a yellow girl to Pikachu, which opens up a whole can of worms surrounding light-skinned black women that are constantly called bitches on this record for our protagonist to pull their hair and then ejaculate all over, to the point where Lil Yachty made an entire song called Lady in Yellow about it. But again, it's hard to differentiate between ugly, frequently hypocritical womanizing and just sheer incompetence on this thing. Again, this is a guy who, in between describing all the places his jizz is going, or to quote him, she wants a meat peak to eat all of the skeet skeet on a song called X-Men that really has nothing to do with comments outside of a passing reference on the hook. He's trying to slam other MCs for not being as good as him, saying that he's not one for pillow talk despite doing it 2 songs earlier, and says those other rappers are stinky and dirty like farts. Really? I'm sorry, this isn't clever, this isn't funny, and when you throw in how he mispronounces Stephen Colbert's name on Harley, compares a girl to the Nintendo character Kirby twice, and then rhymes Kirby with itself, and does it all through an auto-tuned warble that sounds midway between Travis Scott, Kid Cudi, Biz Markie, and Kermit the Frog, with far less charisma and somehow less range in his upper register, it leads to an MC who seems way over his head with nobody sane stopping him. And don't give me that bullshit how there's supposedly some difference between Lil Yachty and Lil Bo. They both have the same bragging about brand names and gross sex, except one alternates between crooning and whining about it a little bit more. And you know what? Here's the real infuriating thing about this whole thing. Amidst all the mess, there are songs I don't mind here, mostly because of the production. About 7 songs into the record, it does pivot a little bit more towards agreeable territory, with the buzzy synth against the chunky trap beat and being at least passable in comparison to the droning chiptune blocks, hollow synths, and badly blended percussion that comprise a lot of this record and don't even bang that hard. And he follows it up 2 songs later with Better. And yeah, it's corny with all the references to growing old with this girl and playing checkers and naming stars nonsensical names, but there is an innocence and watery reggae guitar groove to the song that kind of works for me. I don't quite like Forever Young as much. I think Diplo's production is more messy than it should be, but at least Lil Yachty's flow is mostly decent on that song. He has potential if he tries. But you know what, I'll say it. I like the synth tones on Lady in Yellow and Moments in Time. They've got some hollow atmosphere that a better MC or an R&B singer could kind of make work. Hell, bring it back as a blatant 80s soft rock tune with some real groove and guitar and a sax solo to end things off. Give it to The Weeknd. Even if you kept a lot of the same lyrics, I'd probably really like it. Now, you know, for as much as I think Grace is completely worthless on Running with a Ghost, she had a better debut album, and you really should not interpret Tegan and Sarah if you don't know what to do with it. And I find Lil Yachty's 808s and Heartbreak-esque tones on No More painfully clumsy and really badly mixed, but there could have been some sincere melancholy that held the landing with these songs, because it's not like the tones on songs like Made of Glass or the closing tribute to his mother on Mama. They aren't expressive or sincere. There is some emotion there that feels real. The problem is that when you place it opposite so much of the hedonistic, self-absorbed sloppiness, it feels so dissonant and not in a way that reflects the duality that Lil Yachty is trying and failing to create. But you know what, on some level, I guess there is a part of me that could see this as representative of some teenage emotions, for better or worse. Not trying to say anything about teenage emotions or tap into angst that feels real or relevant to modern teenagers, or even speak to their experience. To me, this feels a lot more like Lil Yachty's male teenage fantasy that might be shooting for something more, but ends up making a wet, sticky mess that isn't remotely profound. And sure, artists have made this sort of thing for self-gratification for years now. Hell, I think the reason I'm slightly more forgiving of the cornier moments because they feel at least a little bit more consistent. But you know what? Speaking as someone who wrote hundreds of thousands of words of bad fiction as a teenager, original or otherwise, it's not something you want to revisit anytime later and you just feel faintly embarrassed for the whole affair. I think Lil Yachty could do better, but I don't know if he doesn't try or what the hell he was trying to do here. It doesn't work. As such, I'm thinking a light 4 out of 10, and I don't know how the hell I could recommend it. There are a few decent cuts, but nothing great, and they're outweighed by all the ugly, incompetent, or just plain monotonous. And when the kids that like this grow up in 5 to 10 years when Lil Yachty's forgotten by pretty much everybody when his buzz goes away, they'll all probably feel the same. Just saying. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. I can't imagine why I had this much to say about Lil Yachty, but if everything I talked about wants you to check this out out of morbid curiosity, Links in the description below if you want to buy it. And hey, I got the poll up there, so all you Lil Yachty fanboys, I actually don't think most of you like this either, but hey, there's your opportunity to vote on it. Beyond that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. And if you guys want to get involved in my scheduling process so I can avoid crap like this and talk about, say, the underachievers instead, hey, the link to my Patreon is right there, where 3 times a week you guys get to vote on my schedule, and once per week you guys get to add records to my schedule, or even movies if you're in the higher tiers. More details right there, but until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.